Houses used to be less expensive. Interest rates were lower. Living expenses were less. Did you miss your window? It's not too late.
Moving forward with the Dekker team. Moving forward together with the Dekker team.
Welcome to Life's Inside Track, episode 751. I'm Yetta Dekker.
And I'm Ken Dekker.
And we are honored that we get to have conversations with you weekly about how to build wealth wisely through life and real estate decisions with even greater clarity, confidence, and conviction for what is next.
You know, I've helped many people buy a home when they thought the window had closed.
And that's whether
slammed
it was,
shut and
right.
locked, closed.
And that was whether it's a first home and sometimes an investment property. Because this isn't just about first time buying.
Yep. Or
This
even
is
a move up.
Even a move up, or even a transition from city to country or country to city. Like they thought their access to their next was slam shut. Wasn't just the window, it was the door.
Yeah, the window. Well, you can slam a window too. Yep.
You can?
I've been able to slam a window.
Okay. But even whether a window or a door, because I think a door feels more final. It feels like when a window slams shut, there's another one to open. When the doors are closed, there's only a certain number of doors into most houses. So it feels more final. And I think, there is greater competition for every dollar you earn. Every dollar that you earn, there is greater.
The gas pumps, the food costs, everything has put pressure on housing, the ability to have a home, even rentals. The whole thing is under a pressure cooker. As a matter of fact, a recent survey by RBC said that more than half of Canadians feel financially paralyzed.
Like the word paralyzed, when I was reading that in the RBC poll, I thought, that's not just like stuck. That's not just like, I got to wiggle myself free from this tight place that I'm jammed in. This is a full-on paralyzed stop. Not like a temporary. It is like, I can't lift my hand to make the phone call that I need to make. This is, I'd rather not open that bill because I don't think I'm going to like what it says.
Ooh, another stat that I was reading this morning, we didn't really put it into the show, but that brought me to it. And that is that the number of people who have missed a mortgage payment went up 25%. That's not saying 25% of people are missing mortgage payments. So don't take me wrong. It just means if 100 missed last month, 125 missed this month. 25%
more people are missing mortgage payments.
Yeah, which means there's more and more defaults coming. That's telling you the Canadian population is stressed out. And many people who maybe aren't as stressed, but yet they look back. They look at back when their parents bought or their siblings bought or, their friends bought 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and they're going, I'll never be able to buy. And that's what puts them in that paralysis, right? They're no longer thinking, what does it take? Recently, young girl, I was explaining to her, she's 19, just turned 20 actually. I was explaining to her about the first home buyer program. And it was prior to Christmas of last year. And I said, go in, make your appointment before the end of the year and register for the first time home buyer program because your $8,000 yearly contribution room starts when you register.
Right, when you open the account. And you can put money into it, $8,000 a year.
Up to
$40,000 in total. So 5 years, basically.
For 5 years.
If you register it for 5 years. So this is an important distinction, though, because if you don't add that context, you're not going to see the gravity of what
Yeah.
happened to her.
And it's thinking ahead, right?
Right.
Like people go, oh, I'm 19 or 20. I'm not going to be able to buy a house. But you don't know what your situation's going to be when you're 25
Or 24.
or 24. And on top of that, if you don't prep for it today, you won't have the opportunity when you're 24 to put 40 grand in at one shot, save all that income tax on it, pull it back out to buy your property. So I'd explain to her, go in and book a consultation with the bank to sign up for your first-time home buyers program.
And it's okay if you only put $50 in. It still begins the accumulation of the contribution room.
Yes.
Right? So it doesn't matter that she doesn't have 1,000 or 3,000 or 8,000 right now.
And unfortunately, like I sat there and watched her book the online appointment. She booked it. She had her call. I wasn't sitting with her because it was a couple days later, her appointment. But that gentleman talked her out of opening it, saying, oh, if you don't have $8,000 now, don't open one. And I went, oh, it drove me crazy.
It drove you
Excuse me.
crazy.
It drove me crazy. And I said to her, like, you got to go back in and do it. And unfortunately, she lost a year of contribution room. So she did register this year. Now she has 8,000 room, but she would have had 16,000 room. And that drives me crazy when we're getting advice from people who don't know.
Right. So maybe that's not your situation. Maybe your situation is the bigger house. Maybe your situation is your first investment property. The comparison gap is really what we're talking about. We start comparing to what other people have done, what other people have, and we compare to what the market's done.
Yeah. And we also compare what somebody has that's older than us sometimes, you know, like people say, wow, my parents live in a beautiful house or whatever, or your parents only paid $27,000 for their house. Now that same house is $1 million. But you can't go backwards in time. You know, the old adage, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, or the next best is right now. We can only look at what things are right now and plan for the future, what we can do to do that. You know, maybe you're a little bit older. Maybe you're in your 50s or 60s and you haven't bought a home. You know, a couple years ago, we helped a lovely person buy their first home.
Mm-hmm.
And how old was she?
In her 60s.
In 60s.
And she had actually decided she could never.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like the paralysis was set. She was single. She'd been single for about 20 years, had never owned a home prior, didn't own a home in her single years, and thought, there's no way I can do it. And yet that was just a thought process that it was too late. We actually were able to find her a property that had 3. It was a triplex.
Mm-hmm.
She lives in one and the other 2 are rented out. And so it still fit qualifications, like in terms of finances.
Because the other 2 almost paid the entire mortgage.
Exactly. And so I'm not saying that can happen every time, and yet you don't know until you look beyond the comparison trap. I'm going to call it the comparison trap.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, she was willing to do things to sacrifice a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like move out of the city to the country, to a less expensive area, commute when she needed to commute in.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that has moved her on her wealth building journey significantly.
Well, it's changed everything for her from a financial perspective, right? So when you're thinking about your own situation, we share stories because hopefully you can see yourself, or you can see what is causing you to stop in other people's stories. And yet, really, the question is, what is causing your paralysis? Do you think that an investment property is too risky? Well, then let's have a clarity call and converse around why it might not be risky. And in fact, it's going to be your greatest rate of return other than paying off debt, right? Paying off debt is the greatest single rate of return you can get if you've got high interest debt. So what is it you need to maybe get I'm not going to use the word stuck. I'm going to use the word paralyzed, unparalyzed from where you're your thinking has you paralyzed.
Yep. And I talk to the younger generation frequently about real estate, right? And they have this mentality that they're never going to be able
Not all of them.
No, not all of them. There is a mentality that they're never going to be able to afford a home because, houses are more expensive and all these things. And so they start to set themselves up to be a self-fulfilling prophecy because they think I'm never going to be able to own. So why would I start saving money for a down payment? Why would I live more frugally? Why would I rent less or stay in my parents' basement for a while or whatever the case may be? Why would I do that if it's so out of reach? And that's the issue. We've lost that hope of home ownership, I think. And when you get that back and you start to see a plan and a process and you get clarity, you'll start to make different decisions. And once you make the decision, it will make your actions different. And when your actions are different, you get a different outcome.
Right. And, what I've learned is the future didn't look like I thought it would look when I was younger. No. And your future probably isn't going to look like you can imagine it to look. Ours looks way better than I could have imagined. And our first investment properties were, from all human standards, terrible investments. Right? Terrible investments, meaning we overpaid for them. They were country properties on septic. We even had to replace one of the septics almost immediately. We didn't know how to select a tenant, so we put somebody in that was running a daycare on an old septic system. I know, doesn't sound brilliant. And I was a brand new pretty new realtor at the time. I didn't understand the implications of that.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I didn't know. And yet those terrible investments is what allowed us 5 years later to sell them all. There was 4 of them to open our business. So Solid Rock Realty wouldn't even exist today had we not bought those terrible real estate investments. So if I had compared to what other people were doing, and the reason I overpaid for them is as a realtor, I felt I needed to do that.
Yep.
I needed to stay above reproach and not look like I was taking advantage of anybody and all that. That was my mindset. And so I overpaid for property. I didn't negotiate. I just gave them what they wanted. Remember?
Oh, I remember.
You remember. Even Ken thought it was a little crazy.
We still came out.
And it still turned out fantastic. So comparing to what other people were doing, even comparing to the market, it was more about those little tiny actions. It changed how we spent our money.
Oh, yeah.
Because we stopped spending our money and we were pouring it into properties that gave us an exponential return, even on financially what looked like a terrible investment.
Yeah. And, recently we helped a couple buy a property in Greeley. And they wanted to be close to their family, and their family was willing to sign as a guarantor on the mortgage to get them their start, right? So every generation has its own challenges and issues. And it's how do we look for the opportunity? How do we look for the out-of-the-box thinking that we're going to get ahead, significantly ahead, from those that are paralyzed, right? So if you've been wondering whether there's still a path forward for you, then you might want to jump on our Dekker Team website and book a clarity call. Because life feels lighter when we navigate it together. And thanks for joining us on Life's Inside Track. Because remember, when we move forward together, we've got this.
Moving forward with the Dekker Team. Moving forward together with the Dekker Team.